welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping straight into the mechanics of how we all make decisions. We're going to explore the foundational psychology of persuasion.
Right.
And our mission really is to identify those core mental shortcuts that we all rely on, these weapons of influence, and figure out what exactly is the psychological trigger that activates them.
We're basically looking at why people say yes, often when it's, against their better judgment.
Yeah.
These principles, they operate way beneath our conscious thought, and that makes us predictable. If you can understand these click word tapes that run in the human mind, you can understand everything from, say, marketing campaigns all the way to international diplomacy.
And we have to start with what is maybe the most bizarre story in the sources, because it just perfectly captures this whole automatic response thing.
The one in Arizona.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The jewelry store owner. She was trying to sell this large stock of turquoise jewelry right in the middle of tourist season.
Yeah.
It was good quality stuff, but it just wasn't moving.
Right. Just dead inventory.
Totally.
Yeah.
She tried everything. Markdowns, moving the display case around.
Yeah.
Nothing worked. So before she leaves for vacation, she's completely fed up, and she scribbles a note for her saleswoman.
Okay.
She meant to write, cut the price in half, just to get rid of it, even at a loss. But her handwriting was so messy, the employee mistook the letter E for a 2, so she accidentally doubled the price of every single piece.
And what happened?
The entire lot sold out. Instantly, she comes back, every necklace, every ring, it's all gone. People only bought the stuff when the price was dramatically inflated.
That is our perfect jumping off point. I mean, that behavior is the total opposite of rational economic self-interest, but it makes complete sense when you see it through the lens of automaticity.
Right.
We actually see the same thing in ethology. That's the study of animal behavior. They're called fixed action patterns.
Okay, let's look at the classic example here, the one with the mother turkey. We all think of maternal behavior as this really deep, ingrained thing, but what's actually triggering it?
Well, the maternal instinct in a turkey is almost entirely controlled by just one sound. The cheep, cheep of her chick.
Just the sound.
Just the sound. Scientists proved this with a stuffed polecat, which is a natural predator that turkeys hate and will attack on sight. They put a little recorder inside it playing that cheep, cheep sound.
And the result is it's astonishing. The mother turkey didn't just ignore this predator. She actively gathered it underneath her. She mothered it, responding only to that sound.
And if you take that trigger away, the whole maternal behavior just vanishes. If her own chick doesn't make that sound for some reason, she might ignore it, or in some cases, even kill it. Her response is completely non-analytical. It's like a recorded tape. Click the trigger, and whir, the tape plays.
So these are tiny little trigger features that set off these huge pre-programmed responses, like the male robin that will attack a random clump of red feathers in its territory, but completely ignore a perfect replica of another robin if it doesn't have those red breast feathers.
The red is the only thing that matters. Precisely. And it's easy for us to, laugh at the turkey. But we operate on incredibly similar principles. We have to. The modern world is just too complex to deeply analyze every single interaction or every price tag.
So we create shortcuts.
We do. They're efficient, and most of the time, they work. They stop our brains from getting overloaded.
Which brings us right back to the human click word triggers. And the Harvard experiment with the copier line is just fantastic proof of this.
Ellen Langer's study, they tested how many people would let someone cut in line at a busy photocopier. So when the person just said, "Excuse me, I have 5 pages, may I use the Xerox machine?" compliance was pretty low.
Okay, makes sense.
But when they added a real reason, because I'm in a rush, compliance just shot up to 94%.
That seems reasonable. But the kicker is when they use the word because, but didn't give any new information.
That's it. When the person said, "Excuse me, I have 5 pages, may I use the Xerox machine because I have to make some copies?" well, the compliance rate was still 93%.
That's incredible. So the actual reason is almost irrelevant. The brain is just hearing the word because, and that's the signal.
Absolutely. The word because is the trigger feature. It tells the brain a reason was given, you can comply now. It just completely short-circuits the hard work of actually thinking about the quality of the reason.
So the jewelry store customers were doing the exact same thing. They weren't turquoise experts. They were just tourists, overloaded with information, and they fell back on a default shortcut. Expensive equals good.
Correct. The doubled price tag became the trigger for quality. And this is where the danger lies. These shortcuts are necessary, but they make us so vulnerable to anyone who knows how to fake the trigger feature. That's really what manipulation is. It's like social jujitsu. It's using our own efficiency against us.
Okay, let's pivot now to the second colossal weapon of influence, the rule for reciprocation. This creates a kind of an obligation economy that is just way more powerful than we think.
This rule is, it's fundamental to human society. It just says that we feel this deep obligation to repay whatever another person has given us. A gift, a favor, an invitation. Anthropologists say our ability to even form complex societies, to share resources, it all flows from this rule. The phrase much obliged is a direct reference to this feeling of being in debt.
And this feeling of debt, it doesn't seem to follow a rational timeline or even a rational cost-benefit analysis.
No, it transcends both, and that's what makes it so powerful. I mean, think about the incredible example of the Ethiopian Red Cross sending $5,000 to Mexico City earthquake victims back in 1985.
And at the time, Ethiopia was. I mean, it was ravaged by famine.
Exactly, an impoverished nation sending money to a country that was comparatively much better off.
So why?
Because 50 years earlier, back in 1935, when Italy invaded Ethiopia, Mexico sent them aid. The debt was decades old, the circumstances couldn't be more different, but the obligation to reciprocate, it just won out.
That really shows how deep this feeling runs. It's almost impossible to shake. But how does that get manipulated? Where does the rule start to overcome, just common sense or even personal feelings?
The Reagan-Koch study, that is the classic example of this rule, just crushing personal dislike. In the experiment, subjects rated paintings alongside a guy named Joe, who was secretly part of the research team. And Joe was told to act either really likable or really unlikable.
Okay, so the subjects either liked him or they actively disliked him.
Right. And during a break, Joe leaves the room. For half of the subjects, he comes back with a 10-cent bottle of Coke as an unsolicited gift. Later on, he asks everyone to buy some 25-cent raffle tickets from him.
And the ones who got the Coke bought more tickets.
They bought twice as many. But here's the key. What about the people who disliked Joe?
Did it still work on them?
It did. Even the people who genuinely found Joe unpleasant felt obligated to repay that 10-cent Coke by buying, 50 cents or more of his tickets. The power of the reciprocation rule was so strong, it just steamrolled the very relevant fact that they didn't like the guy.
That's the critical part. The manipulator doesn't even have to be likable. They just have to be the one to create the debt. And you see this with all sorts of exploitation tactics.
Like the Hare Krishna Society's old strategy in airports. They figured out that just asking for money wasn't as effective as creating a debt first. So they started using a benefactor before beggar tactic. They'd give you an unsolicited gift, like a flower or a book, and they wouldn't let you give it back.
So just the act of physically taking that thing you didn't even want triggers the rule?
Precisely. The second it's in your hand, you feel that psychological weight of indebtedness, which leads to way more donations. And people would often just throw the flower in the next trash can. Yeah. It wasn't about the gift, it was about the obligation.
And commercially, this is why the free sample is so powerful, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's a cube of cheese in the supermarket or the famous Amway bug.
With the Amway bug, a salesperson would leave a whole collection of products with a potential customer for a day or two, and they'd say, there's no obligation.
But there is.
But of course there is. The partial use of a product, or even just having it in your house, creates a very real psychological debt. When the salesperson comes back, that obligation to buy something is incredibly strong.
Okay, so let's dig into a second, maybe even more subtle, part of this rule. The obligation to make a concession to someone who has conceded to us. This is the rejection then retreat technique.
You might know it as the door-in-the-face technique.
Right.
And it's a social mechanism that's usually very helpful. We need to be able to compromise to function as a society. So if I make a big request and then I back off to a smaller one, you feel this pull to meet me in the middle.
Oh, I think we've all fallen for this. I know I have. A kid came to my door and asked me to buy $5 circus tickets. Easy no. But then he immediately retreated to his smaller request. Well, how about just buying a couple of these $1 chocolate bars?
And you bought them.
I bought 2, even though I don't really like them. Why? Because he made a concession. And my brain just screamed that I had to make one in return.
That's exactly how it works. In the scientific test, researchers asked college students for a huge commitment first. Would they counsel juvenile delinquents for 2 hours a week for 2 years?
That's a massive ask.
It is. 100% of them refused. Then the researchers immediately retreated to their real, smaller request. Would they chaperone a group of delinquents on a single one-day trip to the zoo?
And the compliance rate.
It shot up to 50%. When they just asked for the zoo trip up front, they only got 17% compliance.
So it tripled. Compliance tripled just because they asked for something ridiculous first.
Right. And the technique gets a huge boost because it's also using another principle at the same time, perceptual contrast. The second request just looks so much more reasonable by comparison.
Give us another quick example of that contrast principle.
Sure. Think about a clothing store. A good salesperson is trained to show you the most expensive item first, like the $495 suit. Once your brain anchors on that number, a $95 sweater seems, almost cheap by comparison.
Or real estate agents using setup properties, showing you a couple of overpriced, rundown houses first, so the third house, the one they actually want you to buy, looks like a palace.
Exactly. And the combination of reciprocity, the concession, and contrast is what makes this so potent. It's so powerful. It can even help explain some truly disastrous political decisions.
The sources bring up the Watergate break-in planning.
Yeah.
G. Gordon Liddy's first proposal was this outrageous $1 million operation with call girls and kidnapping plots.
And John Mitchell and Jeb Magruder, they just immediately rejected it. So Liddy retreated to a $500,000 plan. They rejected that too. Finally, he came back with the $250,000 break-in plan, which they approved.
A plan that was still completely stupid and unnecessary. So why did they sign off?
Well, according to the documents, they felt reluctant to send him away with nothing. Liddy's retreat from his insane initial plan was seen as a concession, and it triggered their obligation to concede in return. They were basically psychologically backed into a corner and approved a crime because the original ask was $1 million.
That is just... It's deeply troubling that our natural drive for compromise can be twisted into making criminal choices. Okay, let's move on to our third and final weapon, commitment and consistency.
Right, this fundamental human desire to be and to appear consistent with what we've already done.
We value it so much. It's the basis of logic, stability, rationality. You see at the racetrack, bettors become much more confident in their horse the second after they've placed the bet. The act of commitment forces their beliefs to align.
Or that famous beach towel experiment. When people were just asked to please watch my things, they became these virtual vigilantes, physically stopping a staged thief. That tiny verbal commitment activated this powerful drive to act consistently with that role.
It's an internal pressure. And, like the other principles, it's just ripe for exploitation.
The toy manufacturer strategy around the holidays is just a masterclass in exploiting this.
It's so clever and so cynical.
It is. Before Christmas, a company will heavily advertise some must-have toy. Kids beg for it. Parents make a promise. Yes, I will get you that toy. Then the manufacturer deliberately undersupplies the stores.
So the parents can't find it. They have to buy other substitute gifts to put under the tree.
Exactly. But that initial promise, that commitment, is still active. Then, in January and February, when sales are slow, the manufacturer starts advertising again and floods the stores with the toy.
And the kids say, you promised.
You promised. And the parents, driven by this deep need to see themselves as consistent and trustworthy, go back to the store and buy the toy. They end up buying 2 expensive gifts instead of 1.
So what makes a commitment really powerful? The sources identify 4 key factors. And a lot of this was learned from the Chinese internment camps during the Korean War. They didn't use force, they used psychology.
The first factor is making the commitment active. So prisoners were urged to write down these sort of mild, slightly anti-American statements. The physical act of writing makes it feel more real, more irrevocable.
The second is making it public. If that written statement was then posted around the camp for everyone to see, the external pressure to appear consistent just skyrocketed.
Third, it has to be effortful. This is why so many groups have these harsh initiation rituals, whether it's an ancient tribe or a modern college fraternity. The more effort or pain you endure to join a group, the more you value that group to justify your suffering.
You tell yourself, I went through all that, so this group must be amazing.
It solidifies the commitment. And the fourth factor, and this is maybe the most crucial for long-term change, is it has to feel like an inner choice.
This is why the Chinese used tiny prizes, like a few extra cigarettes, for writing those essays, instead of big threats or big rewards.
Right. If the reward is too big, the prisoner can just say, oh, I only wrote that for the reward. But if it's small, he has to find an internal reason. He starts to think, maybe I wrote this because I kind of believe it. That internal responsibility is what makes the commitment stick.
Which perfectly sets up the most insidious consistency technique of all, the low ball.
The low ball is where you get someone to commit to a decision based on a really good offer. And once they've made that commitment, they've filled out the forms, they've mentally sealed the deal, you take the original incentive away, and they often stick with the deal anyway.
The classic car dealer tactic. They offer you an amazing price on a car, you get excited, you do a test drive, then they come back and say, oh, sorry, my manager says we made a mistake on the calculation. It's actually $500 more.
And people still buy the car. Why? Because in that time between the initial commitment and the bad news, the customer has started to grow their own new reasons for buying it. I love the color, or I already told my friends about it. The original reason is gone, but the commitment has grown its own new legs to stand on.
We even saw this in that Iowa energy study. Residents kept conserving energy after the initial incentive. The promise of getting their name in the newspaper was taken away. They'd internalized the identity of being a public-spirited citizen.
The low ball works because we hate admitting we were wrong, so we double down. Which means, knowing all this, we really have to talk about how to defend against it.
Absolutely. The sources give us two main defense strategies. And the first one is about just immediate physical self-awareness.
You have to learn to listen to your stomach. You know that tightening feeling, that signal in the pit of your stomach when you realize you're being trapped into some foolish consistency or an unfair exchange? That's the moment to push back.
And the defense is to be direct, to just call it out, to say, wait a minute, I know what's happening here, and I refuse to be locked into this just because I made an initial commitment on different terms.
And the second defense is for when the tactic is more subtle. You have to trust your heart of hearts.
So this is something you do after the fact, a kind of gut check. You ask yourself a key question, but you have to listen for that very first flash of feeling before your brain starts rationalizing.
The question is this: knowing what I know now, if I could go back in time, would I make the same choice again? That very first gut-level feeling you get in response, that's the truth. That's your signal to find a way to back out.
You know, this deep dive has really shown that the very things that help us survive in this complicated world, our reliance on automaticity, the social fabric of reciprocation, the stability of consistency, these are the exact same levers that are used to manipulate us.
It creates this constant, profound challenge. We need these mental shortcuts to function, but we have to stay aware that the very principles that serve society so well can be turned against us by anyone who knows how to fake the trigger. And I think that's the awareness we all need so we can let the shortcuts work for us without letting them become, the hobgoblins of our little minds.